There is nothing like a slow, lazy weekend in between the last round of the playoffs and the Super Bowl. We've got some good Skins news to hit, though, and we'll bring that right to you now on the Hogstyle.
Welcome to the Hogstyle.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Sean is off hunting snow bunnies, I've been told, and Adam is in the blizzard in the south, apparently, so he has no power. But we got Jamual on to help fill the void for those two. So, Jamual, you're pulling double duty. You got to not only be entertaining, but you have to be in depth in your analysis. How's it going?
Well, shoot, I'm doing all right. It ain't nothing to me, you know. This ain't nothing to a guy like Mo. So, I'm ready to do it. I can take the test.
All right, good, because I can't be entertaining or insightful most days. Steve? You have no blizzards, and we're chasing no snow bunnies, I imagine.
No, I was just telling you guys that, I was distressed that I had to put long pants on yesterday, but fortunately I'm back in shorts today, so that makes me feel better. Yeah, thank goodness, because it was getting pretty chilly. I mean, it was down into the 50s yesterday, so.
Yeah. Now, I imagine you got to wear long pants for work, though. You won't work in a shorts environment.
No, I wish I did. Gosh, that would be great. Work in a shorts environment.
Yeah, I think we all kind of wish we lived in or worked in a shorts environment.
Well, but you also have to make enough money to live, so I don't think,
Yeah.
Unless you work at Microsoft or Google or something, I'm not sure that shorts
they're more lenient.
Not necessarily, because who does get to wear shorts to work and makes a lot of money? That's Redskins coaches. Because they do.
Especially Jay Gruden.
Yeah, Gruden loves to wear his shorts and stick his playbook right in the crotch, which is my favorite Jay Gruden during training camp, when you just see this big roll of a plastic sheet sticking out of his pants.
Trying to check defenders. Receivers.
It's so awkward.
Because he kind of looks like a middle-aged accountant, not really a football coach anyway. So that doesn't help.
It's not a good look.
It's like you ought to see him. It's like Gruden, Tomlinson, and Smith, CPA or something. Rather than head coach.
Well, let's start, since we're already on the coaches topic. Let's talk about the two guys we hired, because when we did our last show, they hadn't made anything official yet, and they hadn't announced anything. And then by the time our show was out, they had announced that we had hired both Kavanaugh as our offensive coordinator and Minuski as our defensive coordinator. So why don't we start from the top? And I know we did a poll on Minuski.
Yeah.
Steve, why don't we lead with that?
Okay, the poll? All right.
Yeah.
The poll question, first of all, Minuski was hired literally as we were releasing the show. I mean, I think that's just a guarantee that's going to happen.
Right.
Anyway, the poll question was, do you approve of the Redskins' apparent hiring of Minuski as defensive coordinator? That was the poll question.
I'm going to just guess a lot of people said no.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the way we do these, you haven't been involved in our poll questions before. The way we do this is I'm going to ask you guys what you think the public would have voted for. And so since you just brought that up, Jamal, what do you think the public would have voted for in that poll?
If I remember, it was three options, right? Like a yes, no, and a neutral or something like that. Yeah,
it was yes, no, and then not sure, wait and see.
Okay.
So those are the three.
I would guess a lot said no. Just because of the fact that they did that off first impulse before they thought, it might not be too bad. But I'm going to guess a lot said no.
All right.
I'm going to say, I want to say yes, but I think most people said not sure. I've been a little more bullish on this than most people. So, I always think that I'm ahead of the curve. So, I'm going to guess people are not sure.
Okay, well, I would make a guess, but I have the results sitting in front of me, so that guess wouldn't be very accurate.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be very good for me to guess. Actually, Alex is right.
Oh.
Jamal was wrong. Yeah.
Really?
Full 51% voted not sure, wait and see, and then 34% voted yes, meaning they do approve of the Minuski hiring, and only 15% outright said no. I was very surprised at that. I would have thought, as you did, Jamal, if I didn't have the results sitting in front of us, because everybody was so down on him. But
I got to give more credit to Redskins fans, because the way I saw my timeline, they was sick. They
were brutal. Yeah, well, they were brutalizing it for sure. I think if it had just been a yes or no, it would have been more of a no. But I think a lot of those people that were mad
They
voted
found
wait
the
and
out
see.
with the wait and see.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly right.
But I want to give Redskins fans credit for not panicking before they need to for a change.
Which is fair.
Because that half of us saying, well, we'll see, that strikes me as very well balanced and level headed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think you really do truly have to wait and see, because really,
yeah.
what I really want to know about Minuski is what defense is he going to run?
Right.
Are we is it going to be more of the same? Are we going to go 4-3? Are we going to go 3-4? Base and stick to it. I don't know. What do you think? What do you guys think?
Well, his defenses over the years has been mainly 3-4. His base 3-4s. But he's also spoken to the fact that since of the fact that the game has changed over time, where you're always in a three receiver, one tight end personnel. You're also going to be in a lot of sub packages a lot. So it's more so a lot of 4 defensive linemen with Kerrigan and Preston Smith or Trent Murphy on the edge. But likely his base is going to be 3-4 is what he stated.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's okay. We just need better personnel. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
I've been saying all these, from seems like months now. I think, and I'll say it again, even though it's a broken record, those of you out there who think that any defensive coordinator, be it Greg Minuski, be it Vince Lombardi, was going to be a panacea for the Redskins' defensive woes are just sadly mistaken. It's a process, and along with a better coach, that's a better teacher, that's less stubborn, that's willing to adapt, his scheme a little bit more than Joe Barry ever did. Along with that comes the need for a better defensive line, better inside linebackers, in particular, and safeties. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I agree with you, because when no matter who came in here, there's already a reason why Wade Phillips and Gus Bradley took other jobs elsewhere, and it wasn't because of the fact that they just didn't want to come to Washington. They probably didn't mind staying here, or not staying here, but the money we was probably gonna offer them, it was gonna be hard to to turn it away. But 2 coordinators for sure had already turned this job down due to the lack of talent that was already on the roster. So you're just dealing with a situation where it doesn't matter who came in. The best situation for any defensive coordinator that came in was for the general manager to help this man out in a offseason that's loaded with defensive talent.
Now, I think you guys are generally right. I think one thing Gruden's kept on pointing out in all his interviews about both his coordinator hires so far and some of the position coach hires as well is he's really emphasizing that we need to get coaches who are better teachers on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep.
Guys who will take the younger talent and help build them up, because it seems like that was a big issue with why they let Barry go, was guys like Breland and Preston Smith weren't growing as players. They were, if anything, regressing.
I think Preston Smith, I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think Preston Smith, he maybe needed a better teacher, but with him, he was also playing out of position, because of the scheme. If Preston Smith is not a guy that you want dropping into coverage very much. I mean, it's going to happen somewhat, in a 3-4 defense, but you really want him to be an edge rusher.
I agree with you.
More than anything.
I think that if you're using any of our outside linebackers to drop back that much, it's a mistake.
Yes,
I think. And the thing also is that we had 3 of them, and we wanted to get them all on the field all the time, and I don't think Barry really had schemed that properly.
Well,
that's a little tricky to do, 3 outside linebackers if you only are going to have a 6-man front.
Yeah, I do think, though, honestly, that Preston Smith showed, like, he got an interception in a drop back situation against the Vikings, but
Sure.
I think in overall, like, our linebackers, they're not necessarily, even though you have to do it, like, there's times where you have to do it. So we can't just say rush 100% of the time. But these guys, they definitely need the proper teaching and learn specifically how to get in their zones on time and stay out of their, the inside linebackers and the safeties, where whoever's playing closer to the line. Because it's situations where you saw Kerrigan. I remember specifically against the Eagles game on the road, where Kerrigan is dropping back into Will Compton's zone, and they're dropping they're letting Jordan Matthews run free in the slot. So it is situations where communication works and being a better teacher, and I think Minuski has done a good job with his position group as well already. He got 9 sacks out of Trent Murphy, who was basically on his last leg here. before the season started.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, left for dead. Yeah, absolutely. And don't misunderstand me. I mean, yes, outside linebackers need to drop back in coverage, particularly if you have a cover two, because there's a hole in the coverage in cover two, right in the shallow middle that the linebackers typically have to fill, when you've got the safeties back in the deep quarters and the cornerbacks covering the flats. But the point I wanted to make, and those are linebackers, and sometimes middle linebackers do that, but what I really wanted to mention was the middle linebacker situation, because if you think about what happens in a 3-4 defense, and what we play, at least what we have played, I don't know what Manussi's going to do. We've been playing a one-gap defense, and for 2015, we've tried a two-gap defense, and what that means is, in a one-gap, is that the defensive line up front only has responsibility to fill one gap. In a two-gap, it's they're filling both gaps to either side of each other. But in the one-gap situation, that puts some pressure on the linebackers. Now you have to have for a 3-4 defense to work. You have to have talent in the middle linebackers,
physical
linebackers in particular. Yeah, because the idea is that the front three occupies the space, and then the linebackers make the plays. And we've got Will Compton and Mason Foster. Great follows on Twitter. Great guys. All American dudes.
Here's
both
the
of
setup.
them. They both seem to like the line. Like DC. Love them both, but neither one of them are athletic enough to be quality starting linebackers in the NFL.
Not in the system we were using, at least. I think.
Right.
If
I think those
you can scheme around what they do.
I think both of those guys are better suited, probably, to be rotational players, and so to make it work long term, we're going to need to find Patrick Willis. A guy like Patrick Willis, somebody who's an elite level middle linebacking talent.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, because so I was going to say both those guys, Mason Foster and Will Compton, they're serviceable people, but as far as your starters, you don't really want to have them as a starter, especially in the inside linebacker position for a 3-4 defense, because they're likely taking on offensive linemen. They're taking on offensive linemen almost every single play in the trenches, and if they're not, obviously dropping back into pass coverage. So your odds are you have to be able to shed blocks and get off blocks basically almost half the time. Like, you have to be very effective at it. You can't just try and elude your way around these blockers like you often saw Will Compton do. Mason Foster is
when it's a one gap system.
Yeah. Mason Foster is very physical, but at the same time, he and Will Compton as a duo, that's just not going to work. Especially Will Compton, where he does it a lot. It's not just very rare or seldom, but he does it often.
Now, I mean, I'll just to finish this up, I have seen that Minuski is more of a two-gap guy than a one-gap guy, but he'll use both.
It's nice to say that, but until we have a real, true, prototypical nose tackle, the two-gap system just isn't going to work here.
Oh no,
believe
me, I agree.
We should be all over that.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those guys who still scratches his head why we didn't keep Knighton for another year for that exact reason.
Because Knighton didn't produce. I don't want to revisit. We don't need to spend too much time on Knighton.
I know. We don't need to revisit it, but to me, he was the best
to
guy at that nose position that we had to try and make the 3-4 work.
Except that if you look back in the game logs, because I'm a nerd, about these kind of things, he wasn't really getting more than 10 plays a game.
10, I understand.
He was very ineffective.
But if we're going to do a two-gap, we need somebody to be a nose tackle. We don't have that. We don't have anyone big enough.
Absolutely. I just don't think it's Knighton. I mean, I know a lot of fans
not anymore,
are kind
but
of
I'm just
enchanted
saying,
by the idea of Terrence Knighton, but there's a reason he's at home.
I agree.
He play this year.
I agree. So, the two-gap thing, and the other thing I remember seeing was that when he was a coordinator in Indy and other places, he really likes having those inside linebackers blitz a lot more. So that's another thing to watch for.
Yeah.
Oh, the double A gap pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He loves that.
Yeah, that's actually. I mean, you have to have intelligent, quick thinking inside linebackers for that, because I know Will Compton's a smart guy, but at the same time, you also have to have somebody who's fast enough to bring pressure to that center and the interior offensive lineman as well. So I
don't know if he has that speed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Foster might be able
Foster
to have that speed.
No,
Foster don't got you don't think so?
Nah, man, Foster don't got that. But
right.
I actually like that. I think our friend Mark Bullock wrote a post on that as well, as far as Minuski's games in Indy. So he definitely has some things that he's capable of bringing here that I like, and I also think very quickly, I think he was a big contributor to 2011 through 2014, the San Francisco team, even though he wasn't there, he did a lot of building for that team as well. So
He did.
If Scott McCloughan is able to help him out this offseason and give him some time to work and develop with these guys, along with his friend Tom Sula on that defensive line, things may work out for the better. But obviously,
Yeah.
I'm in wait and see mode. So they have a good reputation, but they got to prove it here.
Yep. Well, let's move on to the offensive side of the ball real quick. We upgraded Matt Cavanaugh from our quarterbacks coach to our offensive coordinator. Now, I looked up some fun little factoids about Cavanaugh's career. He's been a coach for a long time, since 1992. He's worked under guys like Harbaugh and Bill Cowher, just to name some highlights there as far as his coaching career. But I want to go through 3 names from his playing career. He was a backup quarterback for 13 years. He started in New England under some guy, I don't remember. It was in 1978. The Patriots were a irrelevant team back in the 1970s, if you remember.
They were terrible. They're not just irrelevant. They were awful.
Right. But then he went to a little team known as the 49ers in 1983. And you can imagine...
the 49ers do something good in the 80s?
Yeah,
I
a
don't
little
think they
something
did.
under some Walsh guy, some kind of West Coast offensive system.
Good.
Yeah.
I heard he's pretty
Yeah. Well, he followed that up by playing for Buddy Ryan and then Bill Parcells in 90 and 91. So he's got a couple rings as a backup quarterback from playing under 2 of the 3 greatest coaches of the 1980s and 1990s. Let's say that.
Buddy Ryan.
He made some
Nah.
good business
Overrated.
decisions.
No,
Buddy
but
Ryan
he's
is overrated as a head coach.
no. I was saying Parcells and Walsh are
Yeah.
2 of the 3 greatest of the 1980s.
Yeah.
They're not. Neither of them are number 1 though, because number 1 played coached here.
So what you're saying about Matt Cavanaugh is he's got a lot of experience.
He's been around a lot of smart people.
He knows the West Coast offense very well. If he grew up under Bill Walsh,
Yeah.
So that's good. I'll say this about Cavanaugh. Cavanaugh seems to have made a difference in Kirk Cousins' life. Because what I think we saw from Kirk Cousins in 2015 versus 16 is that the offense really opened up under the 2016 version of Cousins, because he was able to read the field better than he did in 15. In 15, he was captain checkdown, and that's partly why his stats were so good in 15. But in 2016, you saw an offense that at times did not look like a West Coast offense, because he was
aggressive.
looking downfield, very aggressive. He was checking off his first read, going to his second read.
Right.
And Cousins doesn't have the greatest arm in the world, so sometimes he can't do it. But he really made progress as a quarterback, I think, and you got to give the credit to Matt Cavanaugh for that, in my opinion.
I
At least some
agree.
of it.
I think he deserves some credit for that. I think the nice thing is, I think he's worked, even though he has West Coast experience, he's worked in a range of power run offenses
He was with
under, like I
Baltimore
said,
for a
Bill
while.
Cowher, stuff like that. So, I think he will be able to have some versatility as an offensive coordinator, where I like McVay, but he basically was just a Shanahan, Gruden, like those were his influences, and those are very similar downfield, aired out type guys.
The thing with Kavanaugh though, as we've probably he was hired, I think sometime last week. I'm not sure exactly what day, but when they offered him the job, I think Jay spoke on it, saying that I think he was going to be calling his plays though this upcoming season. As far as the Kavanaugh hire though, I'm indifferent. I'm the same thing with as far as Minuski, but I do feel like Kavanaugh will have a lot of importance, or his impact will be felt during the week, not necessarily on game day, because I feel like, I think the way his role is being portrayed as of right now is that he'll be the person obviously coordinating, constructing the game plan, getting the first set of plays in for the first set of scripted plays in for the game day, and making sure the offense is up to par as far as being in the right places for when they call the plays on Sundays. But I brought that up because I think that's fine. He has a lot of experience, but it also goes back to this type of hire, goes back to Jay Gruden, because I think a lot of us know the situation that he's in right now. Jay Gruden is in a situation where he's viewed, and I think is a lot of legitimate points to it, that he's viewed as a lame duck coach right now. It seems like he's on the high seat. He doesn't have an extension right now, which, who knows, it may come sometime during the off season or sometime during the regular season. But with him calling his plays, he's on the hot seat. He has to prove that he's able to get the best out of these guys, and Kavanaugh should be able to help him as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm not too wild about Jay Gruden calling the plays, and I get why he would want to do it. And partly it's for the reasons you said, Jamal. It's that this year is a make or break year for him. Dan Snyder is not known to have patience with coaches. He's proven that over 20 years now.
Yeah.
He's never had a coach go over 4 seasons. And I wrote there's a post that I wrote a few weeks ago about this, and I do think they ought to give Jay an extension. Assuming that this year doesn't just go in the tank. But 2014, if you guys remember, he did call the plays in 2014. It was just a disaster, for a lot of reasons. I think it would be wiser, and far be it for me to tell a NFL coach what to do, but it seems to me that it would be wiser if you let Kavanaugh call the plays, and Jay I guess apparently how it worked this past year is that Jay would say, I want to run play, I want to pass play, and then Bill Callahan, and Sean McVay would talk about it, and then McVay would call the play and read it into Cousins. And
Right.
It seems to me that gives the head coach a little bit more of an opportunity to take a strategic kind of view of the game. So I think that would be the better setup, just my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I can understand that, but just far as me, I feel like in terms of just an overall mentality of a competitor, you got to remember, like, Jay Gruden got here because of his offense. That's the reason why he was hired. And I understand, like, 2014 was a bad year for the offense and for the defense overall, like, period. The offense couldn't get going. I think there was no continuity at the quarterback position as well, and there was no you had Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. You didn't really have Jordan Reed. You didn't really have a running game either. Alfred Morris was in the midst of his decline. You just didn't really have a lot of things going for that offense in general. But as the season started to move on, 2015, 2016, you got stability at the offensive line. You got stability at quarterback. You had two playmakers on the outside, and you have a good trio at running back. So with Jay Gruden having the ability to work more, and odds are you're going to add more in the offseason, it can go more in his favor. He has a lot more to work with, and I think he'll be able to show more of what he can do as a play caller.
Yeah, I mean, you may be right. Look, I could be wrong.
Shoot, one of us could be wrong. I mean, well, one of us is going to be wrong, but
Yeah.
One of us is going to be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe Jay has grown. Maybe he obviously has grown. He obviously has gotten better, and I can see why
Right.
he'd want to do it. I don't know. I just think he ought to take the Joe Gibbs approach to offense. The Joe Gibbs version 2 approach to offense, which is let's kind of oversee it and manage it. To me, what was most important about all these hires, and I think we probably ought to finish it up after this, but from an offensive perspective, the system needed to stay the same. What they didn't need to do is bring in somebody else, pick a name as an offensive coordinator and let them install some other system. That would be dumb. And by not doing that, by promoting Kavanaugh, they're keeping the system the same, which is going to help everybody. So I'm fully supportive of that. I just not sure that Jay needs to be the one literally calling plays. That's all.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think this is all stuff we're gonna find out pretty quickly. When the next season starts. But speaking of next season starting, we have a lot to get to before we can field a team because we have a lot of people who are unsigned, and so why don't we start going through that?
Okay.
Steve, you kind of compiled a free agent list.
Yeah, well, what we're going to do here is we're going to take the next couple shows to talk a little bit about Redskins free agency in a little bit more detail every week. We started this last week, actually, and when we did a real brief overview of the salary cap. But what we thought we'd do this week is I'm going to give you the list of Redskins free agents, kind of status of them, and then we're going to talk some Kirk Cousins, and we will move on to more free agency topics next week. So for this this season, the Redskins actually have a lot of free agents. There's the unrestricted free agents are Chris Baker, Kirk Cousins, Vernon Davis, Junior Gillette, Pierre Garçon, Terrence Garvin, Kedrick Golson, Ziggy Hood, Duke Iannacho, Deshaun Jackson, Cullen Jenkins, John Sullivan, Nick Sundberg, Greg Toller, and Dante Whitner. The restricted free agents Will Compton, Ty Secchi, Chris Thompson, Deshaun Phillips, Lyndon Trail, and then the exclusive rights free agents, Maurice Harris, Matt Ioannidis, and Vincent Painter. And just real quick, before you guys comment, what restricted free agent means is that if the Redskins choose to offer them what's known as a tender offer, they can maintain their rights. Depends on what tender offer they give, but the essence of it is the Redskins will have right of first refusal, and they may get compensation for it. And then the exclusive rights free agents, which again are Harris, Ioannidis, and Painter, basically means those three guys can't negotiate with any other team. So it's calling them a free agent is a little bit of a misnomer.
I'm about to say, so basically they're not going anywhere, really.
Right.
They're not going either unless the Redskins choose to just not make them a tender offer, in which case that means they would be street free. They'd be free agents. So those are the free agents for the Redskins. Sorry, guys. So before we talk Cousins, anybody have sort of general thoughts about our free agency this year?
Obviously, I think the guys that are, exclusive free agents, just give them all an offer, bring them back at least because camp, you need bodies at the minimum. Yeah. They're all worth that. If not more, because I have higher hopes for Harris and Ioannidis still. I'll be honest, with most of our free agents, I'm not that excited to re-sign many of them. They're the big names, but after that, we got a lot of guys who are older. I'm ready to let older guys walk. I think we need to start going young every year. I always say if you're over 30 and you're a free agent, we're probably better off without you.
Yeah, that's I can't disagree with that. I think the one person that I was looking at, actually two, now that I think about it, two people that I was looking at was Garcon and Vernon Davis. I think of those that was 30 or older, those were the two I would bring back. I would try to bring back.
And that makes sense. Those are kind of, they're red chip, blue chip level talent.
Yeah, so when you look at Vernon Davis and Pierre Garcon, I would say that also you will make attempts at keeping Baker, Garvin, Ziggy Hood, Iheanacho, Compton, and Secchi, and Chris Thompson.
And I'll just say they've already re-signed Sundberg, by the way.
They re-signed Sundberg.
Oh, yeah.
He's not a free agent anymore. Yeah.
Obviously, I think they're going to keep Harris and Ioannidis and Painter because of their age. They're young. You can develop them. But I named those guys. I know they aren't, they didn't have spectacular years, but I think what we were talking about earlier, they're great depth guys. They don't have to necessarily be the starter because a lot of them played starting roles here, which made them look bad because they had to play majority of the snaps. That's not what they can do. But if they can come in for a play or two for the backup, for the starter as a backup role, it definitely can help, especially at the line when you need a good rotation, a solid rotation. Ziggy Hood, actually, he didn't play great, but he actually had a decent year, not solid. So, you got some type of potential with these guys, especially as role players.
I would add to that Junior Gillette. I think Scott really likes Junior Gillette.
Forgot about him.
If he shows that he's back from the Achilles, I think they'll try to re-sign him. I don't know about Ziggy Hood. Ziggy Hood is a rotational guy. I think they need to find another starter. I think that the guys they'll definitely let walk, Cullen Jenkins, John Sullivan, Dante Whitner. Greg Toller produced fairly well, I thought, last year. I thought he was better than
he might be worth it for a veteran depth chart.
He's going to be a late in free agency kind of guy.
Let him explore his options.
Yeah, in terms of the young guys, the restricted free agents, Deshaun Phillips wasn't good last year. I think it's possible they let him walk. Who knows?
Didn't he have that one? He had the one big play against the Eagles, right? Wasn't that him that blew up the kick returns? Or am I thinking of someone else?
You may be thinking of somebody else. Oh no, that was I know you're talking about. That was DeShazer Everett. You talking about the punt return?
No, Phillips is the useless corner. Sorry,
he recovered a fumble. He did something all right against the Dallas at home. So.
Oh, okay.
That's about it.
But
all right.
Certainly of the restricted and exclusive rights guys, other than possibly Phillips, I think they'll tender all those guys: Compton, Secchi, Thompson, Lyndon Trail, Maurice Harris, Ioannidis, and Painter. but we didn't see much of Vincent Painter, but he's a young guy developing, and he's min salary guy, so there's no reason not to keep him.
And Secchi's an
anyways.
interesting one in my mind, and this is something I actually mentioned I want to talk about in depth on another show, but just real briefly.
But
I
you're
think
gonna do
you
it
could.
Here anyway.
Well, I just want to mention I think you could actually get something for him if you were to shop him around, but I don't know how that would work with his free agent status.
'Cause you got to think about it too.
Well, I do. I can.
I was just gonna say.
Go ahead, Jamal.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. Now that I think about it, because I said we got to try and bring Secchi back, but after the way he's played, he's probably earned himself starters money, for maybe a good 2 or 3 years. So, now that I think about it, you actually have a good point, Alex. We may want to try and get some compensation for him.
Okay, so let's talk about that real fast. And what that means is, certainly they're going to offer him a tender offer, but there's different levels of tender offers for the restricted rights free agents. And so the top one, basically you can make him an offer that's going to mean a first round pick in compensation to a second round pick. So it depends on what level they offer him, but I do think that they'll offer him a level where he's at least in my mind worth a second round pick compensation. Because he's he proved he can start. We honestly let's be honest here if we can for a minute, because we're all about that on this show. Trent Williams most certainly had one of his better years when he was out there. Now he had the drug suspension, and we'll talk about.
He's all pro if he didn't miss those 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, and we can talk about the drug suspension another day because there's issues that go along with that. But point is, during those 4 weeks when Trent Williams was not on the field, we really didn't see that big of a drop off, at least in terms of pass coverage.
No, not in terms of pass.
He did an outstanding job in pass coverage.
No,
and I think everybody's going to see that, and I do think that somebody could offer him starting money. He's a little older, and so he's I think he's going to be 30 this year, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And so if he's going to get his, it's going to have to happen soon for him.
Yeah.
So,
If you're looking at some of the offenses in the league that are desperate for tackle help, you're telling me they wouldn't consider a 30-year-old maybe to play right tackle for 4 years?
Listen, I mean, and linemen can go a little older, than some other players too. So he may have 5 or 6 good years left in him, particularly since he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him.
Right. Well, that's why I said you look at him as a 4-year option, maybe.
Yeah.
But
let's talk about let's talk some Kirk Cousins, shall we?
Yeah, let's talk about the big one because that's Kirk.
Now there's been a lot of back and forth in the media this week, from Cousins, from Bruce Allen, from Jay Gruden. I think Scott McLuhan might have made a statement or two. In my mind, all of it. He didn't. Okay. In my mind, all of it's garbage except one thing. Cousins did say that if he was offered a franchise tag again, that he would sign it because that means they want him. So to me, all the rest of it's just negotiating posture and doesn't really mean anything. But when Cousins said he'd sign a franchise tag again, to me that said something. So that's a good thing. What do you guys think about Cousins?
Well, I think you're right about that. I think that's a good sign from Kirk, and I think he's kind of indicated he wants to do that because and I think his agent knows that sets the market for him right away. His agent has always said the franchise tag is our friend, which is interesting. Not all agents think that way. That's right?
Well, I mean, Cousins' case, if he signs it, he's going to have made $44 million in 2 seasons.
Right.
So the tag has been very well.
Not many people are going to complain.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think was said that I found interesting, and I think it does indicate something, was when Bruce Allen came out and said, I don't know where all these other rumors came from. We want Kirk here. Like he basically talked down the idea of trading him.
Well, he's not going to say anything otherwise. He's not going to come out and say, "Yeah, we'd be open to considering trading Kirk Cousins." I mean, it's just negotiating posture. Here's the way I look at it: if they sign him to a franchise tag, and it's going to be about $24 million, so he's made $44 million in 2 years. Well, $44 million is about what would have been guaranteed at signing if he had signed a long-term contract last season.
Right.
And so he's not far off of what he would have made anyway. I think all the back and forth with Allen and Gruden and stuff is just, they're not going to say anything but we want him. I just don't think it really means much at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Well, but I think if you were thinking about trading him, you just wouldn't mention it. That's my.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I may be wrong.
I mean, it was just. I think that whole situation. I think they were just probed into it because they took the interviews. So I think the way they asked them, they just said specifically, what are the chances that he was coming back. So I think Allen was, out of a scale of 1 to 10, he had to say 10. But in terms of just this entire these tactics that's going on right now, there's truth to everything, regardless of whatever whatever the words are. If they deny it, it doesn't matter because there's some truth to it. Like they have thought about the possibility of trading him because of the fact that they know exactly what we think. Like if you go another season under the franchise tag, what are the odds that you're going through the same thing next offseason? You have 100%. To think. You have to think of these. Yeah, you have to think of these type of situations. So when it comes to Kirk in general, I think it's good to say that you think he's going to be your quarterback for 2017 and for the long term. But I also feel like the best bet for this team is to get this long term deal done now, because if you franchise him again, you're going to find your way in the same. You're going to find yourself in the same situation next year. And odds are he's walking because you're not paying him $30-something million, and you wasted 44, 45 million the last 2 years. Not getting him to a long term deal.
And the $30 million is the $30 million is the amount of the tag for a third year in a row. That's where the $30 million number comes from. And they're just not going to pay that. They're just not going to do it.
I just don't see them doing a tag and trade. I really don't. To me, everything that's been said this week, it sounds less and less likely that that's the plan. It's either going to be they get a deal done, or they tag them and release them at the end of the year. I think
Well, listen. I mean, if Kyle Shanahan goes to 49ers, I think it's safe to say that Kaepernick is probably done in San Francisco.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, he does Kaepernick's contract situation. He has a player option for $16 million, and he may take it because financially that would be the smart thing to do. But considering all the stuff we're not going to get political about Kaepernick, but he's caused a lot of controversy. The owner, I don't think, appreciates the controversy that's taken place. But more importantly, Kaepernick himself didn't play well. And so he didn't play well enough to make a team want to absorb the controversy that comes with him, right or wrong, or however you feel about it, it comes along with him. And so if you bring Kyle Shanahan in there, Shanahan, obviously loves Kirk Cousins. You'd have to think that the 49ers would want to make a play for him. And so if you play that out forward, would you take the number 2 overall pick, either outright or in a swap of picks, for Cousins if they threw in another draft pick? That leaves Colt
you have
McCoy
to consider a trade like that. That's a big trade. But I just don't. I in the end come down to the fact that you're going to be in the wilderness again looking for a quarterback for who knows how long. And I'm so sick of being in that world.
I agree with that. As far as you never know exactly when you're going to come across another quarterback like Cousins, and a lot of people want to. The thing that annoys me the most is the fact that people want to be so quick to say that why are y'all so worried about losing Cousins? He's not Tom Brady. He's not Aaron Rodgers. All right, that's fair, and I completely agree. He's not elite. Period. He's not elite, but he's a good quarterback, and you can win with a $24 million quarterback like Kirk Cousins, especially if you structure the deal. It's not always about the number; it's about how they structure it. We can say what we want him for. I had a friend today at football practice say, he's not no $20 million quarterback. All right, that's fine. All right, but at the end of the day, it's not all about 20. It's not $20 million per year. It's just how you structure it. What's the percentage of the cap? We don't know these numbers. We'll never know it until a deal gets done. So if you see this is an example. I don't know the exact numbers. I haven't done any research. But for example, if you signed him for $27 million, if he was still in the 12 to 14 in terms of cap percentage, you're not really hurting yourself as a team. You're not hurting yourself.
Right.
I don't know the numbers. That was just an example, but
actually 12. If he's only 12% of the cap, you're doing pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah, they
I
don't
think
take that and run
I think
with it.
most quarterbacks are way more.
Exactly.
Than
that. So go ahead, Steve.
Well, see, here's the thing, and I agree with what you're saying, and I think people are just going to have to get past the idea that Kirk Cousins isn't worth this because, frankly, with the market the way it is and the way the cap is going, he actually is worth that. That is his market value, is 20-something a year. Now, the only thing is that the Redskins need to avoid is a Joe Flacco, Drew Brees, Tony Romo situation.
Yeah, they don't need
Those are
the
the
inflation
three worst
question.
Those are the three worst quarterback contracts out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is those guys have really big cap hits going several years into the future. Their dead money is really huge.
Right.
Flacco had some options that really locked the team in. The Cowboys had to renegotiate Romo's contract like 3 times because it was so onerous. If they can get a contract that is fairly team friendly in that, you front load the cap hit, you get a descending cap hit as it goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You pay him a big bonus up front. You guarantee how they do guarantees for veteran players is say if in year 3 he's on the roster, when the league year begins, the salary becomes guaranteed for the year. And so you guarantee some more money as the contract goes on. You can structure this thing so you keep his cap hit in the low to mid 20s, maybe descending as it goes on, and then you get the dead money so you can cut him. If he falls apart, you can cut him in say year 3. I think you take it and run with it. Now, if it gets over like 25, 26, 27 million in terms of cap hit, that's just too much. You got to let him go at that point, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that's all completely fair. And I've said before, we need to front load the contract, no matter what the numbers end up being. Front load the hell out of it because we can do it this year. The one thing that, and you mentioned this a little bit ago, Jamal. People keep saying, "Well, he's not Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady," and I'm kind of sick of that because, yes, he's not that kind of quarterback. Those kind of quarterbacks come along once every decade. We were in an era where we had 3 of them, but those eras are rare. Usually there's only 1 or 2 truly amazing elite quarterbacks in the league, and everyone else is just kind of hovering in the good to average range. And, I've said this before. If I'm comparing Kirk Cousins to any quarterback, it always comes back to Matt Hasselbeck for me. He's a good system guy. You didn't draft him with a lot of expectations because you knew he had limitations. And I kind of wanted to ask you guys, what are quarterbacks that you kind of look at him and say, well, he's like this quarterback, and we think we can. And do you think you can build around that kind of quarterback and win with that kind of quarterback?
Well, I mean, I've always liked your Matt Hasselbeck comparison. Because Hasselbeck, I think Cousins' biggest weakness is his arm isn't very good by NFL standards.
No,
his arm strength
not a
is
great
not
deep
very
ball.
good by NFL standards. I think if you rank ordered him in terms of arm strength, he'd be in the bottom third most likely. He doesn't have a noodle arm, but it's just not that. It's just not his thing.
Top of the bottom third. Let's say that.
Yeah, okay. Hasselbeck is kind of the same way. He didn't have a great arm, but he was accurate. He had good football sense. He was fairly mobile. Cousins is more mobile than people give him credit for.
Right.
He's not like a Peyton Manning statue in there, or like Tom Brady, who's like Frankenstein in the pocket. He's going to take 2 steps up in the pocket and just never move. I mean, Cousins can move a little bit. So I like that Matt Hasselbeck comparison. I'd throw Andy Dalton's name out there. I mean, it's kind of the lazy man's comparison a little bit. Because Dalton is, played for Jay Gruden, but
sure.
Dalton is kind of physically the same. They're about the same height, about the same weight. Dalton's a little bit mobile, but not that mobile.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dalton has a slightly better arm in terms of arm strength than Cousins does, and he has better receivers. But they played in the same system and done well in the same system. So I'd throw Dalton's name out there for that. And although I think Dalton probably physically is a little bit better than Cousins in terms of arm. Cousins' problem with the arm strength isn't just the deep ball, though. You guys have to understand that, like Aaron Rodgers can put a ball into a very tight space when he's off balance, when he's not set up right on the run, because he's got such a cannon that he can just do it. Like Jay Cutler, Matt Stafford, Tom Brady. These guys have got elite level arms, and they can put balls where other guys can't. Cousins does not have that ability, so he has to be able to read the field better, which he is getting better at. So that's his limitation. But I'd throw Andy Dalton out there as a comparison.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I told y'all before the show, prior to looking at the numbers, I didn't think it was fair, but I do feel like Kurt Warner is probably my comparison, and this is just based off how they ran their offenses. In St. Louis, again, St. Louis with the greatest show on turf, he had probably 3 Hall of Famers playing with him. Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce. Well, they should be Hall of Famers based on their numbers and how they performed with the
Probably all
Rams.
three of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he had 3 Hall of Famers playing. Orlando Pace too, I think, was one of his offensive linemen. So, he's had a lot of help. But the thing is, he was a great distributor, and he's fairly accurate in terms of getting these passes completed, especially in the short passing game, the intermediate passing game. Go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead, Jamal. I'm sorry.
All right, so I was just saying I do think that in terms of how they distribute the ball and how accurate they were when they stepped on the field was a good thing, because on top of that, it wasn't a fluke when he left from St. Louis to go to Arizona. Again, he's playing with 2 Hall of Famers there. He lucked up with Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald. They're going to be Hall of Famers when their careers said and done. I think that he was great at distributing the ball there, and also I think he had Edgerrin James for a short while as well.
Tail end of his career.
Yeah,
but still an effective running back.
Exactly, he was an effective running back with Arizona. So I just think that the comparison with these two, I just think that they were very accurate in terms of throwing the ball, and also they had a, I wouldn't say high interception rate, because it really wasn't that high, but probably like in the 10 to 14 range on a yearly basis. But they were also very effective in terms of getting touchdowns, getting in the end zone. This year it wasn't that good, but last year, as far as for Cousins, I think he had like 33 total touchdowns, 34 total touchdowns. So obviously a down year this year, but I just think the way they play is similar.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if he could get a career going like Kurt Warner, I think we'd all take it. Kurt Warner's kind of a borderline Hall of Fame player at this point. I like to make 2 real quick points, and part of this goes back to I can't remember which one of you guys said it, but no, Kirk Cousins is not Tom Brady. He's not Drew Brees. He's a system quarterback, but you hear that in. It's looked at as a negative. Oh, he's a system quarterback. Well, you know what? 95% of the quarterbacks are system quarterbacks. I would argue that even Tom Brady is something of a system quarterback. He and Bill Belichick have been doing wonders for decades, and they're probably objectively the greatest duo ever. But certainly they've helped each other. But there's almost no quarterback is so good that he can just play anywhere and excel. You have to have the right situation. And if Cousins has found a situation where he doesn't have to go downfield too much, the offense is structured to get people open, and he gets better at anticipating them. He doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers. God bless him, more power to him. I just also throw out there that Kean Fahey, who you guys hate, I realize that.
Not just us, a lot of people hate him.
Yeah, we had Kean on the show this past off season. And what Kean is the quarterback evaluator for Pro Football Outsiders, and he does have a system, and the system does not rate Cousins high, great. We understand that.
Right.
Kean's comp to Cousins has always been Nick Foles, and the reason why is that Nick Foles has physical limitations. He was a product of the system in Philadelphia, had the one good year, but didn't really have the arm to be successful, and so that's kind of the negative comp, I think, because Kean didn't mean that as a compliment. He was meaning that as, this
that's
is
a
where
knock
he thinks
on him.
Cousins going to go.
Right.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'll just throw that out there as that's another comp out there for you.
But in terms of that one alone, I think this year defeats the argument, period, because Nick Foles only had one decent year. No, he didn't have it. He had a very good year that year. I think 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Something like that.
Something
so
ridiculous
he had
like
he had an excellent season, but he didn't follow it up with an excellent season. First of all, I think he got injured and lost his job. But Kirk Cousins, he followed up a very good first year as a full starter with almost 5,000 yards, 24 touchdowns. Should have been more, we know that, but he finished it up with almost 5,000, and people say that's a stat sheet stuffer. Well, guess what? We were only out of 2 or 3 games this year, so it's very hard to say that he's a stat sheet stuffer when he's constantly keeping the team in games alone. So
right,
that it's a lot to those numbers. Not just the fact
Yeah.
that he threw for almost 5,000 yards, but he did a lot in between. Like if you watch the games, you see what he did. He's way better than Nick Foles.
Yeah.
I think to sum that up, and we need to move on. To sum this up is Cousins is he has his limitations. We've talked about that, but he's I think the best quarterback we've had around here in a long time in terms of his ability, his passing ability, his ability he's got good stats, his ability to read the field. I think you'd have to go back to Brad Johnson, or maybe Mark Brunell, who was on the tail end of his career, to have a quarterback as effective as Kirk Cousins. And I don't particularly want to see a guy like that walk away.
Right.
And that's why I agree. Sorry, but that's why I agree with Alex, though. It's just you just don't want to get rid of that type of quarterback. It doesn't matter how, like, a franchise quarterback is not going to be always a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to be that. But a franchise quarterback can be somebody at a lesser extent and still deliver you championships if you build around them correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we're all in agreement there. We're coming up on 10 minutes left of the show, but I want to briefly talk about our situation with Jackson and Garcon right now. They're both free agents. I mean, I guess the question is, since we were talking free agency, do you want them back, one or both? And I think a big question that I've been asking is, if they're not back, who do you kind of see filling the void? How do you make up for? They both had about 100 targets each this season. You got to redistribute those balls somehow because you're still going to run the same number of plays more or less every season. So that's the other
Jamal,
question.
you wrote a column about that. You wrote a column about this about a month ago. So what do you think? Start us off.
Well, shoot, my opinion isn't wavering. I still think you bring back Garcon. In terms of on the field, we know what he does. He's basically a do-it-all. He's not just first off, he's not just a possession receiver anymore. He's proved that he could get down the field as well. Especially at this age where you think that a guy like him who was perceived as a possession receiver will start losing speed as he gets older. But it's maintained. He's not an elite speed guy, but at the same time he has enough where he can get past a couple DBs. He's effective in the run game. He can run all the routes. He's a first down guy. He can he can move the chains. He's effective on every possession, every offensive possession. He can get you about 3 or 4 catches each drive, and he can get you about 2 first downs on 4 of the catches that he gets. In terms of Jackson, he's solid, but at the same time, his market is going to dictate what he's worth to the Redskins, and shit, we ain't gonna pay that. He's still a speed demon. Like speed is a lot of money on the market, and he can go and get a lot more than what we'll give him here. So that's another reason why I think we should focus more on Garcon.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Garcon is a more complete player than Deshaun Jackson is. Garcon can block. You're not going to see Deshaun Jackson, on a crackback block.
Garcon does everything.
That's not going to happen.
Yes.
He might not do everything as well as the best at every position, but he does everything.
Yeah, and so I do want, and Garcon wants to be here. He's come out and given all of his negotiating leverage away. And he went on NFL Network wearing a Redskins sweatshirt saying, I want to be back. I want to come back.
He said, I want to spend the rest of my career in DC.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he's given away a lot of his leverage. And Deshaun Jackson hadn't said anything, if you notice.
Yeah.
Jackson said nothing.
He's entertained those Philly questions during the season.
Yeah, and there was, his buddies, I can't remember who it was. One of his friends on Philly came out and said that Jackson wanted to be back in Philly. And you'd have to think that Sean McVay would want him, in LA.
In LA as well.
Yeah.
Which would probably tempt Jackson because
the only thing I'll say is this. You can't just throw another speed guy out there and expect him to be Deshaun Jackson. If you start to look at some of Jackson's numbers in terms of his his touchdown rate, the number of long, 50-plus yard catches he's made, his speed, he's approaching Hall of Fame territory.
Yes.
Not in terms of number of catches, but his other numbers, he's close to being a Hall of Fame receiver. And having played a little bit of wide receiver at a very lower level, I can tell you that it's not just about speed. There's a lot of fast guys out there. You have to be able to wide receiver coaches. For those of you who never played, are always talking about telling guys adjust to the ball, adjust to the ball, adjust to the ball. Because you can't just run a pattern and expect the ball to drop into your hands. when you
Right.
have to look and you have to be able to adjust your route mid flight, to go get the ball. And Deshaun Jackson's better than almost anybody at that. He's
Yes,
outstanding at
especially
that.
with
And so
the
we
deep
can't
ball.
just go
Yeah.
get you can't just go get like the next Aldrick Robinson or somebody, and throw him out there and expect him to be able to take the top off the defense like Jackson can. So ideally, I'd like to see both of them back.
Yeah, me too.
For that reason,
Ideally.
but if you had to pick one, I think if you had to pick one, I'd probably pick Garcon, just because he's not a headache. He's a good locker room presence. Jackson's a little bit of a pain in the butt. But I think that truthfully they need both, because I don't think, to answer your question, Alex, in the beginning, we don't have a replacement for Jackson. Josh Doxson might be a Garcon replacement. We don't know. I guess we'll save Doxson for another day. He's got all sorts of
that's a whole
issues
other
with
topic,
the
frankly.
Achilles.
Yeah.
We don't really have a replacement for either one of them on the roster right now.
Well, I don't think we have a replacement necessarily, but I'm not one of those people who says you need to replace X with X all the time. I think you need a certain number of weapons every year, and then you draw up your offensive scheme to fit the weapons you have, not the other way around. When it comes to those two, I want Garcon back. Jackson, I don't think it's going to happen, so I've kind of just moved on in my mind. My big thing...
I don't think the team really went downfield. Sorry, Alex, but I don't think the team really used Jackson appropriately this year.
I don't think they did.
Opened
and,
a lot.
I think the one thing to look at for why that's the case is, you're kind of pointing to it. He had 100 targets. He only caught 56.
A lot of those, his Cousins threw a lot of bad balls at him.
Well,
I think it's Kirk's offense.
Yeah, I think it's a great area because for some reason, earlier in the season, I definitely did see some overthrows with Cousins and Djax, but I do think towards the end of the season, maybe around I think it started actually in the Dallas game on the road Thanksgiving. From that point on, they actually started connecting deep and intermediate and all this time way more often than in the earlier season.
Sideline catches, I'll give him credit for that.
So I do think that it's a great area because I think earlier in the season we don't know what was going on, but for some reason maybe Deshaun Jackson or maybe Jay Gruden put more pressure on the offensive coordinator Sean McVay to start focusing more on Deshaun Jackson earlier in the plays. Or maybe Kirk Cousins had more of an emphasis to get Jackson involved quicker and often in games.
Jordan Reed started getting hurt.
Jordan Reed started getting hurt as well. So I think there's a gray area. I can't pinpoint it, but earlier in the season, for sure, they definitely were not on the same page. But things changed later in the season where that's why Deshaun Jackson was leading the league, I think, at like 18 yards per reception or maybe 19. I can't remember. But he was leading the league in yards per reception for a good while. And actually, he finished it with he finished number one. So, I do think it's a great area. I can't pinpoint what it is, but it's something.
Yeah, I think if I were Deshaun Jackson, I'd want to look for a team that has a real downfield passer. I think if he was with a team like Carolina, with Cam Newton or like Jameis Winston, another
what about
guy
Detroit
who goes
with
downfield,
Stafford or something like that?
It's Detroit with Stafford, because the truth of the matter is when Deshaun Jackson's motivated and healthy, he's almost uncoverable unless you really rotate a lot of defense his way, and it really messes with the secondary to have him back there. And I think if you had a quarterback who was a real good downfield passer, I think Deshaun Jackson could have an unbelievable year.
Yeah.
I think Cam Newton would throw strike after strike after strike at him, and so would Winston. So it's just not really our thing.
Right. And my last thought on all this, if you lose one of them, and that's, like I said, about 100 touches a year or 100 passes or whatever, I want to see at least 50 of those become runs, no matter, what. I'd like to see half of that becoming running the ball more. But let's move on real quick because we're running out of time. We would be remiss to not talk about the Super Bowl. I guess we really didn't have anything specific written down. Just let's get everybody's thoughts about this coming Super Bowl. What do you guys think is going to happen? What are you looking forward to the most? That kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm looking forward to. See, I think what I want to have happen, what I think is going to happen, is in
Two
conflict.
different things.
Yeah, because I'm sick and tired of the New England Patriots. I'm sick and tired of Tom Brady. I'm sick and tired of them winning. I'm sick and tired of their spoiled, entitled, obnoxious fans. But you can't deny what they do.
Right.
And more importantly, from a football perspective, I think the Patriots defense is just so much better and more effective than the Falcons defense.
Right.
That I think that's going to carry the day. Because, yes, Atlanta has got the most complete. I talked about this when I was on All 32 with you, Jamal. I mean, the Falcons have the most complete offense in the playoffs, in the NFL, truthfully. They're the most explosive. They're the most dangerous. They can do the most. But
Kyle Shanahan's a hell of a schemer.
Yeah, he is. But the second best offense has been New England. In terms of statistics and numbers that I went over on that All 32 a couple weeks ago. And then you throw the defense in. Everybody talk about the Texans defense, and
which I underestimated. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I underestimated the hell out of Patriots defense.
Yeah. I mean, because I talked about this. I mean, they were actually number one in points scored against. And whereas the Falcons defense is mediocre and on a good day.
Right.
And so
Even though the Falcons head coach is a defensive-minded guy.
Yeah. So what I want to happen is the Falcons to win, just because I'm just sick and tired of the Patriots. But what I think will happen is the Patriots are probably going to get it done because their defense is so much better than the Falcons' defense. So I think we're probably going to see Roger Goodell handing the trophy to Bob Kraft and have all the obnoxious Patriots fans jump all over it and bring up Spike.
Steve won't lose his damn mind if you see that happen.
Oh, it's going to be awful.
Man, I think, all right, so just to be short with it, since we're short on time, I think the last time I checked, or last time I heard about the spread, was a -3. They were 3-point favorites for the Patriots. I do think that Atlanta will keep it close, and I think they can stay within 3 points with ease, especially with the offense that they have. Kyle Shanahan's a great schemer, as Alex said. So the thing is with them and their offense is they can maintain balance. And the thing is, when it came even to the Packers game, they wasn't necessarily great on the ground, but they stuck to it. They had like 20-something carries between the running backs, or 20 touches, probably like 12 rush attempts or something close to that with each back. So these guys definitely can get the job done on offense. And it's just going to come down to who's going to make the biggest mistake. Mistakes will be made, but who's going to make the biggest one? I don't really trust Atlanta's defense, but I do think they can keep it close with that offense that they have.
Yep.
I'll only add to that before, Alex, you give yours, is I think Belichick, I meant to say this, Bill Belichick will scheme Julio Jones out of the game. Bill Belichick is famous for taking away your primary offensive weapon, and he's going to do his best to get Julio to marginalize Julio's effectiveness. But go ahead, Alex.
Actually, that is a great point. Something I've heard many people talk about lately with Belichick is how his goal every week is to take away your number one option and make you try and beat him with your number 2 and number 3 and whatever. So, hopefully the Falcons were able to plan for that. And, I unfortunately think this one will get decided and it will be pretty quick. Like by halftime, we'll kind of have this one figured out.
That's crazy.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Crazy, Alex.
I've been disappointed with every playoff game this year, except for when the Cowboys lost. So I'm going to be disappointed.
It was only one day. It was really only one day where the playoffs was good this year, and that was that game against the Cowboys.
It wasn't even a full
and then
day.
The Steelers
It was one
and Chiefs.
game of a day.
Oh my!
It was half a day.
Wasn't the conference championship games were just awful?
Yeah,
it really was. It wasn't
and
close at all.
I think that's going to keep on going into the Super Bowl. So
it may surprise you, man.
I hope they do. We haven't had a good Super Bowl, I feel like, in a while.
I think it'll be a close game. I just think the Patriots will pull it out.
Yeah,
I think it'll be a good game.
If the Patriots win, I really hope that Brady and Belichick both say we're hanging it up. This is, it's been a great run for both of them. They're both at that point. I think career-wise, they're at that age where they could.
Listen, Tom Brady is going to try to play
till he's 45.
Another 5 years. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. He's not going to be able to do that. But is anybody excited about Lady Gaga as the halftime show?
I've not been excited about a halftime show since Tom Petty.
Look, I don't really pay attention. Look, first off, I was with my girlfriend last year during the Super Bowl. She went nuts with Beyonce. So but other than that, I really don't. I don't like the halftime shows. Just
No.
because it's a big waste of time. It's like 20 minutes, and I'm just sitting here, man. Get to the second half. I don't like college football.
I'm with
I don't
you.
like college football halftime. I don't know why you're doing this to me. So
No.
that's basically where I'm
Most
at.
of these halftime shows recently have not been very good. I don't think.
I watch them mostly because they turn into train wrecks so often. I think that's the best part is when they.
The
when
Beyonce
it
one
just
wasn't even
fails.
that bad, honestly. But it's just that obviously I don't listen to her, but
Mm-hmm.
it was entertaining to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably
you know,
because she
the best
Beyonce.
ones to me, you had Prince, U2, Bruce
Yep.
Springsteen, Tom
Prince, too.
Petty. Those
Go
are
back
the
to
best
that era.
ones. Prince was awesome.
And the
yeah.
Bruce,
the ones recently, none of them. Bruce Springsteen's right. The recent 4 or 5 past halftime shows, none of them been very good. I don't think. In my opinion.
All right. Well, that should wrap up the show this week. I guess we'll tune back in, and it'll be right before the Super Bowl when we talk to you guys again. But tune in next week. We'll hopefully have some more Redskins news. Thanks for checking us out this week. Remember to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and we will see you out there on the web. Have a good night.